What's up, guys? Caleb McAllister here with the next NogiBJJgear.com technique of the month. And speaking of which, they are actually expanding to xmartial.com, which will be a whole bunch of other equipment and supplies in addition to grappling equipment. You will still use the same promo code, CALEB, Caleb, for an extra discount on top of all your other supplies. So make sure you check that out, xmartial.com, for all the same stuff and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. All right, so my teammate Ashton is going to be helping me talk about the technique for this month. This is really more of a concept than it is an actual move. If you're like me, you were probably told from day one, in a lot of cases at least, don't cross your ankles when you're going for an armbar. And usually that is very good advice, but those of you that have a little bit more experience, I'm sure, are familiar. Every rule is made to be broken, and that's one of the obvious ones, that there are sometimes that's very good advice where it would be completely wrong to cross your ankles. But there are times where it is actually a really good idea to cross your ankles when you are going for the armbar. And we're going to talk about some of the differences and some of the specific situations where that is the case. So let's say I've got mount on my opponent and I'm going for a basic armbar from mount. However you like to do that, I'm not going to talk too much about those details right now. We'll just say basic S mount armbar. And the scenario that we're assuming is happening in this case is my opponent is locking her hands and is trying just to muscle back into it. Maybe a bicep grip, may just be a palm-to-palm grip, does not really matter for right now. The important thing, however, is she has not glued her arm to her side. If she did, I would be reacting differently coming over the top. Whether because she chose to or because I prevented her, there's space underneath the elbow. So what I'm going to do is hook underneath that side of the elbow. For my personal preference, I'm going to use the bottom leg first. I'm going to wedge my leg on a 45-degree angle as high into her armpit as I can. And I'm going to then cross my ankles with the other leg over the top. Now this is an area of some debate. You will see people that do prefer to go with the head and then the bottom leg. I find that I get much better control with the bottom leg on her arm, and it also gives me a little bit more control over her head to use my top leg second. But that is what I'm sacrificing when I cross my ankles. In the more traditional style of armbar from here, I'm either pulling my heel in close to my butt, or I'm extending and using my hamstring to flatten her head out, but I'm using that to be able to control her from moving away from me or to be able to sit up, depending on what I'm doing with with my top leg. Whereas, as soon as I cross my ankles, I can still apply some pressure to her head, but I've sacrificed a lot of it. So that is one of the downsides here. However, especially in a no-gi scenario, what she wants is to be able to start creating a little bit of space and pulling that elbow to the floor. And in no-gi, that can be really, really hard to prevent. It's hard enough in the gi, but with no-gi, it's very hard to prevent your opponent from finding out a little bit of space and sneaking that elbow to the ground. Which is why, when I come to here and I scoot my hips and my heels as close together as I can get them, it's almost impossible for her to now pull that elbow down. It's more possible for her to sit up, because I am not controlling her head as well as I was before. But once I get to here, I've eliminated her most obvious path of escape. A million different ways to break the grip. Of course, my favorite is simply to cup the hands, shoot the elbow to my armpit, rear naked choke grip, fall to my shoulder, and then finish my armbar at that point. Again, we're not really focusing on the move right now. We're thinking more concepts of why am I crossing my ankles, in which scenario, and what benefits does that give me, as well as what problems does that give me. Because if my opponent is not thinking about trying to pull her elbow to the floor, she's thinking about trying to sit up into me, that can be very hard for me to prevent if I'm crossing my ankles. So in a scenario like that, I might prefer to uncross my ankles, control her head again, sit her back down, and then go back to a more traditional armbar finish at that point. The same principle applies if I am playing the armbar from guard. And let's say I'm doing it actually from a triangle this time. Because the scenario that we wind up in, if I'm in a triangle, let's say she's kind of posturing and I don't have a really good triangle, and I decide to switch off to my armbar at this point, the scenario that I wind up in is that both of my legs are over my opponent's head. She does not have the arm on the inside, in this case the left arm on the inside, that she would have if I had done a traditional armbar from guard. And of course there's a million other scenarios where we might wind up with both legs on the head above the arm. If I try to do a traditional leg side by side, heels down here, I can try to do it, but I'm already starting to slip that leg off, and all she has to do is just a little bump with this hand, and she's already passed and probably coming up into like a cradle position, which is not what I'm going for. So in a situation like that, when I decide that I'm going to switch from the triangle to the armbar, The bottom leg, which I'm using to mean the one that's closest to my opponent's legs, in this case it's my right leg, is simply going to keep as much of a bite, heel down, hips up as I can get. If I didn't have the triangle, it probably means she's getting a little bit towards my calf. There's a little bit of a gap there because I wasn't able to finish the triangle, but I can still get as good of a bite here as possible. At the same time, I'm going to use my other leg to reinforce that. So my left leg is going to cross over my right right ankle. Both of my heels are going to bite as hard as I can on the side of her temple as my hips come up. Obviously, I'm keeping that arm tight to my chest, thumb facing up, all the principles that you guys already know. But that's going to make my finish much stronger and much tighter than if I'm here. It also means when she does try to use this hand to push the leg off, I've got a really nice hook on her head. Nothing's impossible, but it's going to be a lot harder for her to finish. So like I said, what we're talking about today is really not a move per se. Those are just two of about a million examples that we could talk about where sometimes you're going to want to keep your legs side by side, heels in. Sometimes you're going to want to keep them side by side, staggered. Sometimes you're going to want to cross bottom underneath top. Sometimes you're going to want to cross top underneath bottom. The point to take away from this is there is no 100% right or wrong answer. There are a million ways to skin a cat. What I want you guys to be taking away from this is what are the principles that are benefiting me? What are the principles that are hurting me in each choice? Some are going to be good, some are going to be bad. Nothing is 100% good, 100% bad. Once you know, okay, if I go this one, all right, I've got better control of her posture in terms of her hips angled to mine, but I've got less control of her posture in relation to her head and what she can do in terms of sitting up. Okay, well, if I know that, then I'm prepared for the options that she's going to have that realistically could be effective on me, and I can then be more prepared to deal with them. So, a million other directions that we can go with that. Like I said, if you want to talk about more of them, please feel free to let me know in the comments or in the messages. Either way, have fun with it. Good training. Ashton, thank you so much for the help. I will see you guys next time.